Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people should be aware that this digital piece contains images, voices, or names of deceased persons in various formats of material including print, audiovisual, and electronic format. We recognise and acknowledge the Yagara, Yugara, and Yugarabal peoples, custodians for the land, water, and community which Goodna Special School is built on and a part of. We pay respects to elders, past, present, and emerging, for their keeping of the memories and continuation of language, culture, and history. We recognise their connection to country and role in caring for and maintaining country over thousands of years. May their strength and wisdom be with us and guide us into the future.
Begin today
by acknowledging
to Shinando
custodians
we meet today
and
pay my respects today.
elders,
past and present,
I extend
that respect
Aboriginal and Torres Strait
Islander peoples.
here today.
Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people are the First Nations people of Australia. They have lived here for over 65,000 years and have an amazingly rich and elaborate cultural heritage. Just before colonisation in 1788, the population of the whole of Australia was estimated to be at around 1.25 million people, with 16,000 people living in the whole southeastern region of Queensland. Goodna is located in the Ipswich City Council area, between Ipswich Tullamore, whose traditional custodians are the Yagara people, and Brisbane Menanjin, whose traditional custodians are the Turrbal people. Goodna is delineated by the natural borders of the Brisbane River, Woogaroo and Goodna Creeks. Before colonisation, this area was home to many Aboriginal people, particularly centred around the area of Queen's Park. The name Goodna means dung. This name is believed to have come about as a misunderstanding of the local First Nations people's languages. Speaking many different languages was common, with over 250 different languages and 800 dialects spoken in Australia before colonisation. Aboriginal children were often able to speak the languages of both parents, generally adopting their father's language as their first language, and as the community, or Bora, each person belonged and was initiated into, was often that of their father. The languages spoken in southeast Queensland have been described as highly sophisticated in their use of verbs and nouns, composition of words, and sentence arrangement, and how emphasis was imparted. It is thought that the language for the area of Goodna was Yagara, and only a handful of words from that language remain known. Following colonisation, there was massive loss of language and other cultural knowledge, such as how to build shelter and find food. For some people, it is still questioned as to which group of people were the original dwellers and custodians of the Goodna area. Currently, the Yugara people are recognised as the First Nations people of the Ipswich Lockyer Valley area, while the Turrbal people were located in the Brisbane City Moreton Bay region, and the Yugambeh people were located from Logan down to the Gold Coast. The Yugara, Yagara, and Yugarabal groups have all laid claim to being the first peoples of the Goodna region, but it is thought that due to so much loss of knowledge of kinship lineage and loss of language, that these groups may be the same, just spelled differently. Yuga is thought to mean no, nowhere, nothing, while Pul or Yugarapul is thought to indicate a people-place association. One of the most distinctive features of Aboriginal social life was the holding of large social and ceremonial gatherings that brought together people from all over the southeast Queensland region, and sometimes from even further afield. These gatherings allowed people to socialize and conduct ritual activities, resolve disputes, and establish alliances through trading of resources or marriage. Each community, multi or skin group had their own unique variations of language, traditions, and practices which have thrived for thousands of years. Goodna was frequented by many Aboriginal people from many different skin groups, as the rivers in the area meant it was ideally located for trading of items such as stone for knives, wood for shields, and shell pendants. In an area east of the Goodna Creek, archaeological surveys found flakes of stone that it is believed were part of major camping areas of special significance. Another area is the flat land along Bertha Street, south of Goodna railway station, which was possibly a camping area for visitors from the Redbank region. Other sites of significance include one near the junction of the Woogaroo and Opossum Creeks, and the second along Opossum Creek and about 1 kilometre east of the former Eden Homestead. 27 kilometres of land covering much of what is now called Springfield. There are 4 sites close to the Bremer River. Other areas of cultural significance exist within the White Rock Spring Mountain Conservation Estate. Special sites for ceremonial activities were commonly referred to as Bora Ground. These were a specially crafted mounded earth circle, or 2 circles joined by a pathway. Men and women also had their own special sites. There are Bora rings located at Camira, on the boundary of Ipswich and Brisbane, and at Redbank, near where the railway workshops are located. The rivers were particularly important in First Nations life in the Goodna area. The Yugarabal people have a connection with the land around Boona, and Yugarabal knowledge holder John Long talks about the Warramjum, or Bunyip. It had a purpose in the life of our traditional Yugarabal people and could be either male or female. It maintained discipline in the waterways to make sure everyone abided by the rules of hunting, as well as to not destroy what was given to us by the Creator for the purpose of survival. It is a physical creature with a spiritual purpose. The Warramjum protects the waters and keeps it clean. It travels underground and you can hear it moving. It sounds like thunder when it moves along the mountains, what we call wumble, wumble. The Warramjum keeps you humble. It represents honesty and respect. With so much movement across the country, the impact of colonization by the British from 1788 had great and devastating consequences for the Australian First Nations peoples. Well before European colonisation of Queensland, diseases such as smallpox, tuberculosis, and syphilis had spread from New South Wales, resulting in many First Nations people becoming sick and then dying. The First Nations people have a deep connection to the land, with a profound understanding of the environment's rhythms and cycles. They identified yearly weather patterns and environmental changes that we now understand to account for at least 6 different seasons compared to the 4 we now use. They observed how plants and animals changed across the year and used these as seasonal indicators for when different foods would be available locally and when it would be necessary to travel for food. During the winter months around April to September, people would have joined together in large extra-familial base camps located near reliable sources of fresh water and food. Long lines of caterpillars and flowing tea trees were a sign that the mullet run was beginning at the coast. Moreton Bay chestnuts were ripe to eat. When the wattle began flowering in August, the geebung fruit are ripe, and kangaroos plump and good to eat. From September, the silky oak begins flowering and indicates the best time to eat eels. People would split up into smaller groups in the summer months, October to March. In December and January, the apple gum is flowering, honey is abundant, the prawn run begins in the rivers, bream can be found in freshwater streams, and black swans are molting and easier to catch. Bunya-nut pines are ripe. Women were involved in gathering and processing a wide range of plant foods, some of which were poisonous and needed to be soaked in water for long periods of time to leach out the toxins before they could be eaten. There was also great ritual surrounding some foods, such as dugong, and restrictions on who would be allowed to kill and eat these foods, depending on skin group and totem, age, and gender. A totem is a natural object, plant or animal, that is inherited by members of a clan or family as their spiritual emblem. Totems help people understand their roles and responsibilities in their relationships within the group as a whole and to each other and creation. Art expressed through intricate paintings, carvings, and oral storytelling provided a vibrant medium for preserving and transmitting ancestral knowledge. The dreaming stories, which narrated the creation of the world and its inhabitants, play a central role in shaping their spiritual beliefs, moral and ethical frameworks. Ceremonies and rituals were often highly elaborate and communal, were integral to Aboriginal life, to maintaining social connections, family and community bonds, and reinforcing their spiritual connection to the land and everyone as a whole. In 1799, Matthew Flinders entered Moreton Bay. Then in 1823, John Oxley determined that Moreton Bay area as a good place for a convict settlement. This became the area known as Brisbane Menangen in Turrbal. In 1823, three convicts, John Finnegan, Thomas Pamphlet, and Richard Parsons, escaped. They were taken in, fed, and helped to survive by the Aboriginal people living around Moreton Bay. Goodna was officially opened for free settlement in 1842, despite European people being present in the Ipswich and Goodna area since 1827. In the 1880s, the Aboriginal Protection Society was formed. The Deebing Creek Aboriginal Mission was established in 1892. People from the Ipswich area, including those around Goodna, were moved onto this mission. In 1893, there were floods in Goodna that were called Black February. A coal mine in Ipswich flooded and 7 miners died. The Indigenous people from the area were aware of this and built their camps on higher ground along the rivers. They had warned the free settlers of the potential threat of floods, but their advice was ignored and settlements were built closer to the banks of the river. In 1897, the Aboriginal Protection and Restriction of the Sale of Opium Act was enacted. This act established close reserves in Queensland and began the long era of the forced removal, segregation, and institutionalisation of the Aboriginal population as a whole. In 1914, the mission was moved to Purga, and the people were told that they had no rights to the land based on the doctrine of terra nullius, that their land belonged to no one and had been taken by the now Australian government. In 1920, Goodna was relocated to above flood levels, and in 1939, the Aboriginal Preservation Protection Act, which led to the Stolen Generations, was enacted. In 1974, Goodna Special School opened, and there were more floods in Brisbane. In 1992, the High Court, in the Mabo decision, handed down that terra nullius should not have applied to Australia. The Native Title Act was created in 1993 as a result. Following the Native Title Act of 1993, the Mullinjari Group made a land claim to the city area of Brisbane. This was disputed by the people from the Yagara and Yugarabal groups, citing evidence of the Yugarabal people as being the original tribal people of the Ipswich and Moreton Bay area. In 2011, more floods in Brisbane had devastating effect on the surrounding areas, leaving many people stranded, businesses and homes destroyed, and lives lost. We would like to acknowledge and thank the Viva Cribb Bursary and Ipswich City Council for their generous contribution and funding of this video production.